One moment, the adeoye family sat on the mat in their sitting room, enjoying a large bowl of delicious jollof rice with tender pieces of goat meat. The next moment, their compound was deathly silent, with the entire family lying lifeless in a pool of their own blood. Nobody could have guessed that a festive Christmas meal would end the lives of an entire family. Worse still, the whispers that began to spread like wildfire in Ayetoro were even more chilling. Someone they all trusted was behind it. Moyo and Bisi's friendship began when they were just 5 years old. Their mothers, Iya Moyo and Iya Bisi, were traders who sold peppers, tomatoes, and onions side by side in the bustling Ayetoro market. While their mothers haggled with customers, the two girls would run barefoot around the market stalls, playing and weaving stories about their future. "When I grow up, I want to be a nurse," Moyo would say, her tiny voice full of confidence. "Then I will be a nurse too," Bisi would reply, copying her friend. They were inseparable, so much so that the market women often teased them, calling them ibeji, the Yoruba word for twins. As they grew older, their bond only deepened. By the time they were 12, they had established a routine. Every morning they met at the village stream, carrying their clay pots on their heads to fetch water. "Moyo, I saved a spot for us," Bisi would call out, waving from their usual place by the stream's edge. "Did you bring anything to eat?" Moyo would ask as she set down her pot. "Of course. Mama fried dodo and akara this morning. Let's share." The girls shared everything: food, secrets, and even their dreams. After fetching water, they would sit under the shade of an old iroko tree, giggling as they gossiped about the boys in the village. "Moyo, I saw Sei staring at you yesterday during the evening prayer," Bisi teased one day. "En? Don't lie, Bisi. Sei is always looking at you, not me." Moyo laughed, her dimples deepening. "That's not true," Bisi replied, feigning seriousness. "Remember last year's yam festival? He gave you a calabash of palm wine to dance with him." "That's because you were hiding inside your father's shop," Moyo shot back, and the two burst into laughter, their joy echoing across the stream. The older women who came to fetch water would often shake their heads in amusement. "Those two," they'd say, "they are more than friends. They are like twins." By the time they turned 18, things began to change. Moyo started attending evening literacy classes at the village school, taught by a new teacher, Mr. Olademeji, a young, educated man who had recently returned to Ayetoro from Lagos. "You should join me, Bisi," Moyo said one evening, her eyes shining with excitement. "Mr. Olademeji is so smart, he makes everything easy to understand." "I can't, Moyo," Bisi replied. "Mama needs my help at the shop." But the truth was, Bisi had noticed the way Moyo spoke about Mr. Olademeji. Her friend's eyes lit up in a way they never had before. Mr. Olademeji was unlike any man in Ayetoro. He dressed neatly in crisply ironed shirts, spoke English fluently, and had a commanding presence. One evening, Bisi waited at Moyo's compound for her friend to return from class. When Moyo arrived, her face was glowing. "Bisi, guess what?" Moyo said, her voice bubbling with excitement. "What happened?" Bisi asked curiously. "Mr. Olademeji walked me home today." Moyo giggled, covering her face with her hands. "En? Why?" "He said it's not safe for young women to walk alone at night." "Did he walk the other students home too?" Bisi asked, already suspecting the answer. "No, just me," Moyo replied, her voice soft with happiness. That night, Bisi tossed and turned in her bed. A strange heaviness weighed on her heart. She tried to ignore it, but deep down, she knew she was losing her best friend to someone else. Over the next few months, Moyo and Mr. Olademeji grew closer. He began visiting Moyo's family, bringing gifts of books for her younger siblings and bottles of palm wine for her father. "He's going to ask for my hand in marriage soon," Moyo confided in Bisi one morning by the stream. "He's already spoken to his family about me." "So soon?" Bisi asked, struggling to keep her voice steady. "When you know, Moyo said dreamily. "Oh, Bisi, promise me you'll be my adeoye chief on the wedding day." "Of course," Bisi replied with a forced smile. "We're sisters, remember?" But that night, Bisi cried quietly into her pillow. Moyo wasn't just her best friend, she was her other half. And now, she was slipping away. The entire village of Ayetoro buzzed with excitement as preparations for Moyo and Olademeji's wedding took over. Women gathered in groups, pounding yam with rhythmic precision and stirring bubbling pots of rich egusi soup. The men worked tirelessly to set up canopies made of palm fronds in the village square, while children ran about singing and playing games. On the morning of the wedding, Bisi sat with Moyo in her family's hut, helping her prepare. Moyo's iro and buba shimmered in the soft light, the gold and blue fabric glowing like royalty. "Your wrapper isn't sitting well," Bisi said, adjusting the cloth around her friend's waist. "There, now you look perfect." Moyo turned to the mirror, her hands trembling. "I'm nervous," she whispered. "What if I'm not a good wife?" Bisi frowned and gave her a gentle slap on the arm. Don't talk like that, Moyo. You're good at everything. You'll be the best wife in Ayetoro." The celebration lasted 2 whole days. Bisi stood beside Moyo as her chief bridesmaid, her smile so bright it made her cheeks ache. She danced tirelessly, moving her hips to the beat of the talking drum, even as her feet throbbed with pain. But every time Oladimeji held Moyo's hand or kissed her forehead, Bisi felt a strange, sour feeling twist in her stomach. Moyo and Oladimeji moved into their new home, one of the few in the village with a shiny zinc roof, instead of a thatched one. It wasn't long before their joy multiplied. Within a year, Moyo gave birth to a baby girl. During the naming ceremony, Moyo turned to Bisi with a radiant smile. "Come, hold your goddaughter," she said, gently handing the baby over. Bisi held the tiny child, her heart softening as she gazed at the baby's delicate features. "She looks just like you," Bisi said with pride. Moyo laughed. "She has your nose. Will you be her godmother?" "Of course," Bisi replied, forcing a smile. 2 years later, a second child, a boy named Aiken, joined the family. Meanwhile, Bisi's life remained unchanged. She still lived in her father's compound, helping her mother sell vegetables in the market. "When will you marry, Bisi?" her mother nagged one afternoon. "Look at your mates. They all have husbands and children by now." "Ah, Mama, leave me alone," Bisi snapped. Marriage is not the answer to everything. But deep inside, envy gnawed at her heart. Every visit to Moyo's house reminded her of what she didn't have. Oladimeji had become the headmaster of the village school. The couple had a television and even a refrigerator. Their children wore polished shoes to school, while others walked barefoot. Moyo's jewelry glistened, and her wrappers were made of the finest silk from Lagos. "Look at what Oladimeji bought me," Moyo would say, holding up her latest treasure, a golden necklace or a brand new lace buba. "Very nice," Bisi would reply, her voice flat, while her resentment grew darker and darker. One day in the bustling market, Bisi overheard 2 women gossiping. "Moyo is so lucky," one said. "Have you seen her house? They even have a fridge. And I heard her husband is sending their daughter to a big school in Ibadan next year," the other added. "Everything she touches turns to gold," the first woman sighed. That night, Bisi sat in her small room, unable to sleep. Her heart burned with bitterness. "It's not fair," she whispered to herself. "Why does she have everything? Why not me?" The next morning she walked to the far end of the market, where old Iya Alabi, the village herbalist, sold her strange powders and herbs. "Iya, my father's house is full of rats," Bisi lied. "They're eating all our food." Iya Alabi studied her with sharp, knowing eyes. "Rats, you say?" she murmured, reaching under her table. She pulled out a small bundle wrapped in dry plantain leaves. "This powder is very strong," the old woman said. "Just a little will kill even the biggest rats." "How much?" Bisi asked, her voice low. "For you, no charge," Iya Alabi replied, her voice laced with suspicion. "But be careful. This is not something to play with." On Christmas morning, the village was alive with joy. The air was filled with the smell of roasting meat and the sound of Christmas songs. Bisi woke early and began preparing her jollof rice. She made sure every grain was perfect, tasting and adjusting until the aroma filled her small kitchen. Her hands trembled as she opened the bundle of powder. "Just a little," she whispered, sprinkling it into the pot. "Just enough." She packed the rice in her best plastic container and walked briskly to Moyo's house. The sun was just rising, casting a warm glow over the village. Moyo opened the door, surprised. "Bisi, Merry Christmas." "Merry Christmas," Bisi replied, forcing a wide smile. "I made this for your family." Moyo's children, Lola and Akin, ran to the door, their faces glowing with excitement. "Auntie Bisi, did you bring Christmas food?" "Yes, my little darlings, special jollof rice, just for you." Come in," Moyo insisted. "Stay and eat with us." No, Bisi said quickly, stepping back. "Mama needs me at home. Enjoy the food. Merry Christmas." As she walked away, she heard Akin's cheerful voice calling out, "Mommy, can we eat now? It smells so good." Later that evening, Ayinke, the Oyasanmi family's closest neighbor, walked to their house with a Christmas gift. The door to the house was slightly open, which was unusual for such a careful family. "Akale, moyo, oladimeji, awao," she called out, stepping cautiously inside. Silence. She pushed the door wider, and the sight before her made her drop the gift. The Oyasanmi family lay sprawled on the floor, their faces twisted in agony, their bodies lifeless. Ayinke let out a blood-curdling scream that echoed across the quiet evening. The entire village of Ayetoro rushed to the scene. Women cried into their wrappers, while men shook their heads in disbelief. The village doctor, Baba Adeoye, was summoned immediately. He examined the bodies, his face grim. "Could it be food poisoning?" someone whispered. "Who could do such a thing?" another asked, clutching their chest. BC pushed through the growing crowd, her eyes wide with horror. When she saw Moyo's body being carried out, she let out a piercing wail and fell to her knees. "My sister! My Moyo! Ha! Oluwa mio!" she cried, rolling on the ground. Her voice was the loudest among the mourners, her tears seemingly endless. Despite the doctor's efforts, no clear cause of death could be determined. Some villagers whispered about evil spirits, while others murmured about jealousy or curses. For 7 days, BC carried her secret like a heavy stone on her chest. She attended the funeral, clad in mourning black, wailing louder than anyone else. "Moyo, my sister! My heart is broken," she cried, clutching the mound of fresh earth on the family's grave. But guilt is a shadow that cannot be outrun. On the 8th night after the funeral, BC was in her room, trying to sleep. The air was thick and still, yet she felt a coldness creeping in. Then she heard it, soft laughter, the unmistakable giggles of children. "Auntie BC, why did you do it?" Her heart stopped. Slowly she turned around. Standing in the dim corner of her room were Moyo's children, Aniki and Akin. "No," BC whispered, clutching her chest. "This can't be real." "Why did you kill us, Auntie?" Anike asked again, her big innocent eyes staring straight into BC's soul. "We loved you. Go away," BC screamed, stumbling back. "We were sisters," came Moyo's voice, calm but laced with sorrow. BC spun around. There she was, Moyo, standing tall, her once radiant face now pale and haunting. "We were sisters in everything but blood. Why, BC? Why?" BC shut her eyes tightly, but the voices wouldn't stop. That night marked the beginning of her torment. Every night after that, the voices came. During the day, she saw shadows move and heard whispers in the rustling leaves. She couldn't eat. She couldn't sleep. Her mother, noticing the rapid decline, grew worried. "BC, Kilode, you look like a shadow of yourself," her mother said one evening, placing a hand on her daughter's shoulder. "I'm fine, Mama," BC muttered, her voice hoarse, "just tired." But she wasn't fine. The guilt gnawed at her like a sharp-toothed rat. Her once bright eyes became hollow, her frame gaunt. Finally, the weight of her secret became unbearable. On a busy market day, when the village square was alive with chatter and trade, BC stormed out of her house. Her hair was unkempt, her wrapper hung loosely around her waist, and her eyes were wild. "I killed them," she screamed, her voice cracking. "I poisoned the jollof rice. I killed Moyo and her family." The market fell silent. All eyes turned to her. "I was jealous," she continued, pulling at her hair. "She had everything I wanted, a husband, children, a beautiful house. I killed them. I killed them all." She ran through the market, screaming and confessing, until the elders came and restrained her. They tied her hands to stop her from harming herself, their faces heavy with disappointment and grief. In Ayetoro, life changed forever. The joyous Christmas spirit that once filled the air was replaced by caution and suspicion. No one accepted food from anyone, not even family, without hesitation. As for BC, some say she still wanders the village, her eyes vacant, muttering to herself, and haunted by the spirits of those she betrayed. At night, villagers swear they hear faint laughter and voices in the wind, reminders that the deadliest poison isn't what you add to a pot, but the envy and bitterness that fester in your heart. And so, Ayetoro learned a painful lesson. When jealousy is allowed to grow, it consumes not just the envious, but everyone around them. Please share the lessons you learned from this story. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. See you in my next video. Goodbye.